Increasingly, our world has become more tribal, more entrenched in partisan ideology. Some of the differences may be annoying, others abhorrent. Yet for most of us, we are unwilling to give up on the people we hold dear. How can we keep the friendships we cherish? There are many ways to answer that question, but one certain ingredient is civil discourse, which I contend has 4 essential elements. Think of the nature of civil discourse as an iceberg, keeping in mind the greatest portion of the ice mass is underwater. The submerged foundation is our character ethic, without which civil discourse is impossible. The mass above the surface represents our personality ethic. It is what others see and hear, the way we carry ourselves, the way we speak. People often like to fixate on the personality ethic, believing that's where star power resides. But focusing solely on the personality ethic would be like me standing before you naked as a jaybird and saying, "So how do you like this belt?" I'm sorry about that metaphor. The image may churn unpleasantly in your brain for a while. I'll wait. That aside, you should be thinking, gee, Alan, maybe you ought to think about something a little bit more foundational. So let's begin by talking about the foundation, the character ethic. The character ethic, part 1, engaging spirit through the 4 human endowments. I like the idea advanced by Wayne Dyer in his book, Your Sacred Self. If you have a choice between being right or being kind, choose being kind. Being kind is about spirit. Being right is about ego. Spirit has nothing to prove. Ego has everything to prove, namely how important and clever I am. My wife understands the difference and occasionally hints I could be a man of greater spirit, greater humility. One day when my ego was in full bloom, I asked my wife, if I could not provide the level of luxury to which you have become accustomed, would you still love me? My wife paused a moment and said, "Of course I'd love you. I'd miss you." The great French theologian Blaise Pascal once said, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." When sitting quietly, we are really listening to our spirit, a source of wisdom and nobility and morality. Naturally, I don't always abide by my spirit. I'm as flawed as the next guy. But being a relatively daring fellow, I'm going to offer an embarrassing example to point out the difference between spirit and ego. Once upon a time, at the entrance of a department store, I opened the door for a woman who seemed to be in a hurry. She swished by me as if she were the royal princess of Zanzibar. She said nothing. So I sang out, "You're welcome." I thought she might quickly return and reply with bated breath and whispering humbleness, "Oh, thank you for pointing out my personal faults." She did not. I was right. She was wrong and needed to be punished. That is pure ego. If I had been driven by spirit, I would have been silent. How can we tap our spirit? The answer is through engaging our 4 human endowments: awareness, conscience, imagination, and independent will. Too often we operate from the most primitive portion of our brain, the medulla oblongata, located at the base of the skull, which controls our fight or flight instincts. You may sometimes feel the medulla register its discontent when someone cuts you off in traffic. Happily, we also have the cerebral cortex that, among other things, activates our 4 human endowments. Here's a personal example to explain how the 4 endowments work. For many years, my father, who passed away long ago, battled alcoholism. By virtue of a traumatic event, he gave up drinking and life was better for the entire family. The years passed. One day, I sat quietly alone in a room and began the process of engaging my 4 human endowments. First, I was aware. I had never commended my dad for his commitment to sobriety. Second, my conscience spoke. My ineffable center of wisdom nudged me to behave like a mature, caring adult. Third, my imagination sprang to life. I pictured myself doing the right thing. After all, like a springboard diver, all things are created twice. First, in our imagination through visualization, and second, in reality. Fourth, I acted on my independent will. I set one foot ahead of the other, got in my car, and drove to my dad's home. When I explained what I was thinking, that I was sorry for never praising him for escaping the grips of alcohol, he motioned for me to approach and then gave me the warmest, most genuine embrace I ever received from my father. That's what it means to operate from one spirit. And spirit is the first essential element for arriving at civil discourse. The character ethic, part 2, choosing the role of an adult. There are 4 roles, 4 modes of communication that people settle into. The first 3 are traditional, conventional styles, all well known, but all tainted by incivility. The first traditional role is the demander. This person is the boss. He or she is always right and always in control. Always the most important person in the room, at least to his or her mind. Communicating interpersonally, the demander cancels out the you in the relationship. An example is in order. I once made a presentation to the executive staff within my organization. At the conclusion, the CEO said he agreed with me. Fueled by his approval, I said, "I think you're absolutely right." To which the CEO responded, "I don't give a shit what you think." I was dumbfounded. The CEO was a flaming demander. No one else in the room counted. When the meeting was over, I immediately updated my resume. The second traditional role is the deferrer, who, interpersonally speaking, cancels out the me in the relationship. The deferrer is a toady, the lick spittle, the person who dismisses his or her wishes, who is subservient to the other. They will censor their own ideas and concerns out of diffidence, insecurity, or abject fear. The third traditional role is the defector. This person attempts to deflect or ignore an uncomfortable engagement by distracting, changing the subject, or pretending that all is well. Sadly, both the you and the me are canceled out. The fourth role is the declarer, who honors both you and me. This person is the adult in the room. He or she has the will to seek to understand and acknowledge the other's point of view while honoring his or her own perspective. The declarer speaks in the first person singular, making declarative statements about what he or she wants to happen, using operational language. The declarer deals with issues based upon collected data and is willing to negotiate. I'd like to expand on 2 points regarding the declarer. First, I said the declarer seeks to understand. That was a point made in Stephen Covey's popular business book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. All professionals abide by that rule. Doctors diagnose before prescribing. Lawyers engage in discovery before building a case. Psychologists listen to the client, only intruding when unclear about a revelation. Seek first to understand is one of the best rules to follow to ensure civility. Second, I mentioned the declarer uses operational language. That means he or she speaks like a scientist. A scientist does not say the lab mouse was hungry, but rather the adult 25-gram mouse consumed 7 grams of feed and 5 milliliters of water in 24 hours. Interpersonally, a declarer will not say, I can see you're angry, but rather, I noticed you raised your voice just then. What's going on? In the first case, the other might say, I'm not angry. Who says I'm angry? Even while steam is jetting out of both ears. In contrast, to say, I noticed you raised your voice, has no judgment attached to it. It's just an observation. At that point, the other might say, damn straight, I'm angry. Now we're getting somewhere. To understand the declarer more fully, I'd like to draw on the wisdom of one of America's most renowned psychotherapists, Carl Rogers, who said, there are 3 conditions that must be present in order for a climate to be growth promoting. These 3 conditions apply to all relationships, parent to child, manager to associate, husband to wife, wife to husband. All 3 conditions are reflective of a fully mature adult declarer. Number 1, the adult is transparent, genuine, and congruent. They have no facades and are willing to express personal feelings and attitudes. Number 2, the adult has unconditional positive regard for the other. The listener's attitude is acceptant, even when the speaker's viewpoint seems peculiar. Right now, you might be thinking, How can I be acceptant of my crazy Uncle Herbie and his nutty ideas? Not to worry. Unconditional positive regard does not necessarily mean agreement. It only means providing understanding within a warm and safe environment. Number 3, the adult listens empathically. The listener accurately senses the feelings and attributions the other is experiencing and communicates this understanding to him or her. The Personality Ethic, Part 1, The Tools of Civil Discourse. Now I'd like to share a model by the American psychiatrist William Glasser. He called it choice theory. According to Glasser, human beings have 5 basic needs: survival, love, power, freedom, and fun. Over time, we develop a picture album of how to satisfy those needs. Our album may include an image of a successful career to satisfy our need for survival, an appealing mate to fulfill our need for love, a professional channel of charisma and expertise to wield power, and a passionate hobby or 2 or 3 to explore freedom and fun. As we build our picture album, we try to match our internal images with the external world. The problem is, sometimes there's no match. After all my dreaming, Penelope Putfarkett still doesn't love me. When that happens, pain rolls in like a tsunami. No one likes to be in pain for very long before doing something about it, which often creates another problem. Unfortunately, many people select irresponsible behavior when trying to escape the pain. They may choose anger, depression, illness, craziness, addiction, even suicide, none of which helps them to match their pictures with the world. And these alternatives are, for the most part, get-my-way strategies designed to coerce people to do what they want. Maybe if I'm depressed, you'll rescue me. Or maybe if I leave a suicide note, you'll know it's all your fault. Then you'll be sorry. They are pitiful, manipulative tactics. This is where civil discourse comes in. What if we redefined civil discourse as genuine love for another? The American psychologist and author Scott Peck defined love as the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing intellectual or spiritual growth for oneself and others. That could just as well be a definition for civil discourse. Let's take that definition apart. First, the will to extend oneself, to give oneself to another human being. That means, to draw again from Carl Rogers, to be transparent, empathic, and dedicated to unconditional positive regard for another. Second, nurturing intellectual and spiritual growth. What a great combination. The great iceberg mass of character under the surface. Intellectual and spiritual growth is what feeds our 4 human endowments, as well as our capacity to thrive as an adult declarer. Third, for oneself and others. I like to think of love as the lub-dub of a heartbeat. The first thump is the blood nourishing the heart. The second thump is the blood nourishing the body. If we don't feed ourselves first, just as the heart is fed first, we are of little value to the body, to the community. Now, let's return to Glasser's model. Imagine that your friend is in pain because his internal images fail to match reality. I have a centerfold in my picture album devoted to Penelope Putfarkett, but she still thinks I'm a schmuck. The most loving and consequently civil thing you can do is share these 4 ideas. Number 1, what do you want? If you're a patient and empathic listener, eventually they'll arrive at some essence of survival, love, power, freedom, and fun. It's what everyone wants. Of course, it's unlikely they'll use those specific words, but in this case, close is enough. What are you doing now is the second question. If they're honest, and they'll only be honest if you're transparent, caring, and empathic, they'll say, I'm getting depressed, or perhaps I'm getting angry, or maybe I'm drinking a lot. Number 3, the next question introduces the moment of truth. Is your approach working? Are you getting what you want? No? Then number 4, let's make a better plan. Now remember, it's not your job to create the plan. That's your friend's responsibility. Although you can be counted as a resource, the plan belongs to him or her. Through the process of making a better plan, encourage the other to use the 4 human endowments. That will keep him from trying something crazy. Finally, keep this in mind when helping a friend. Your picture album will not appeal to another. That's your book. No one else cares about it. It's like no one loves your dog as much as you do. So refrain from shoving your worldview on your friend. It won't go well. Personality Ethic Part 2. Be careful about your vocabulary. The following is paraphrased from a slender but clear and insightful book entitled Making Contact by the American psychotherapist Virginia Satir. There are 8 words or pairs of words to be careful about when engaging in civil discourse. 1, I. Make sure you are clear with your I messages, that they are about you. You are speaking from the vantage of your own picture album, which belongs to no one else. Saying I should not be code for, if you were only like me, all your troubles would disappear. 2, you. The word you is often followed by a judgment. You drink too much. You get angry. You just don't think straight. Number 3, they. They can be a sneaky way of saying you, which still makes it judgmental. Sometimes people use they or the word people to build their case. People say this is happening a lot. What people exactly? How many people? And what are their demographics and credentials? Number 4, it. What is it? Speaking operationally is what needs to happen. Describe the behavior. Instead of saying it's just like you, say I notice you just looked away when you said that. What are you thinking? Number 5, but. But is a way of saying yes and no at the same time. I really love you, but I wish you'd change your underwear more often. The last half discounts and cancels everything that was said before the word but. Sometimes exchanging the conjunction and for but can help. I really love you, and I wish you'd change your underwear more often. Better yet, I want to ask something of you that I feel very uncomfortable about. I would like you to change your underwear more often. 6, yes and no. Make sure the yes and no are said clearly and that they mean now and not necessarily forever, and only for this current issue. No is a word we all need from time to time. Sometimes people say maybe or even yes when they really mean no. Although it's often used to protect the feelings of another, it's really a form of deceit that invites mistrust. I know you'd like me to see the new romantic comedy with you, but I have to say no this time. But only this time. Please ask me again. 7, never and always. These are killer words. You always do that. You never listen to me. These words are seldom accurate. Other than natural physical laws like sunset and sunrise, I can think of very few things that always happen. Number 8, ought and should. These words are bursting with judgment. They say, you just don't measure up. The unspoken message is, you should be more like me, which of course is crazy thinking because no one else owns your picture book. If you ever use the words ought or should, it's a tip-off you're in conflict, and it's time to back off. Final word. So, how do we move towards civil discourse in an increasingly tribal world? Here are a few reminders. Speak from spirit, not ego. Employ your 4 human endowments: awareness, conscience, imagination, and independent will. Be real, caring, and empathic. Be an adult, one who declares his or her mission while honoring the mission of others. Don't foist your picture album upon others. Learn to love by extending yourself for the purpose of nurturing intellectual or spiritual growth for yourself and others. Avoid vocabulary that is designed to judge, reprimand, and punish. And if all else fails, shut the hell up. Yes, that's what I said. And allow others to be whoever they want, even when you suspect their outcomes may be disastrous. At some point, especially if they sit quietly in a room alone, they might wise up and tear out a malign image from their picture album and replace it with something more healthy. One can always hope. I leave you with this last thought from the homespun wisdom of Mark Twain, but with one reservation. I'm not fond of the word stupid. There is meanness and judgment in the term. I prefer misguided or ill-conceived or inculcated. Delusional is probably too risky. With that apology, here's the Mark Twain quotation. Never argue with stupid people. They will drag you down to their level and then beat you with experience.